Hey everyone, your dear old Uncle Otter here with a review for Last Epoch, a young ARPG that I've had my eye on for quite some time now. That joke will make sense soon. Developed by 11th Hour Studios, Last Epoch takes a ton of its visual and gameplay cues from Path of Exile while attempting to carve a unique niche for itself. As a consumer and lover of ARPGs, I want to answer the question, is Last Epoch worth playing? And since I'm such a swell guy, I'm going to tell you up front instead of making you wait until the end of the video. Despite some not so subtle flaws, Last Epoch is definitely worth playing, with a big old fat asterisk. As of right now, Last Epoch is pretty far from being a finished game. As of publishing this video, it is on beta patch 0.710, with some key pieces missing, including a complete story, several masteries for their classes, and even multiplayer capability. We've learned from Wolcen, Lords of Mayhem, that banking on a game before its release might not be the best of ideas. Get out of here, Wolcen! So, if you're in that camp, I understand. You've been hurt before and you're not ready to put yourself out there yet. But me? I'm a glutton for heartache, so I say bring it on. With all that being said, let's do the damn review. As with all ARPGs, we can break down the merits of this game into three distinct categories. Number 1, the systems in place to create unique and powerful builds. Number 2, the minute-to-minute gameplay, and number 3, overall aesthetic, including area design, character/creature models, and story presentation. As far as builds are concerned, there are 4 distinct ways for you to modify your character for a cohesive build: equipments, idols, passive points, and skill levels. Equipment can be anything from an uncommon magical item with up to 2 prefixes and 2 suffixes, as well as static bonuses depending on the type of item, to legendary items, which can drastically change your skills and playstyles or even come with unique bonuses. At this point, it's all pretty standard fare for ARPGs. The legendary items certainly seem pretty neatly designed. All of the ones that I've seen so far will either have some place as a powerhouse leveling tool or the linchpin of an endgame build. Where this game left a sour taste in my mouth, however, was the crafting system. As you play the game, you'll collect these things called crafting shards that will hold either a prefix or a suffix, which you can spend to either grant or improve said prefix or suffix. Every time you alter a piece of gear, you have an ever-increasing chance to irreversibly break said piece of gear, making it so your item can no longer be changed or improved, or suffers a massive penalty to stats. This seems to me to be a way of artificially keeping the player base engaged, not by making your game more fun or interesting, but by introducing the sort of toxic RNG that, at best, leads to a slight boost in power, but at worst, leads to massive frustration. Speaking of mechanics that I find personally frustrating, Last Epoch has a loot gambling system. Wah wah. That's right, you can purchase mystery loot from this Robbie Rotten looking piece of garbage, and those items will randomly become anywhere from common to legendary. I really don't mind this as an avenue for players to target farm certain pieces of gear, but if the most efficient way to gear out your character is to shift-click rectangles for an hour and a half of the time, then I'm out. Oh, call me old-fashioned, but I think that men should get their gear from slaying monsters and raining terror unto their foes, like Jesus Christ intended. On the other hand is the idol system, which I've got nothing but praise for. You've got a 4x4 area in which you can slot in idols of various sizes. The bonuses associated with the idols can range from minuscule, like a very small amount of resistances or bonus damage, to massive, like a % chance to cast an ability whenever you get hit. The modular nature of the idol system, double with unique powers, gives a creative player a ton of control over exactly the type of build that they want to use. Idols makes it very straightforward for you to shift around your stats before a big fight or a problematic area, making sure that you've got the right defensive stats to tackle it. All in all, it's fun, it's unique, it's creative, and I can't wait to push this system to its limits. The other side of the character building coin are passive abilities and skill level. The passive tree is very simple and straightforward, but that's definitely not a bad thing. It works in very similar ways to other landmark talent trees like classic World of Warcraft. You get passive points by leveling up or by completing certain quests, which you can allocate to one of 4 trees. As you invest more points into a given tree, you gain access to more powerful talents further up. The 4 trees represent your base class and the 3 mastery subclasses, but you are not limited to just utilizing the talent tree for your chosen subclass, but your subclass does unlock a powerful back half to their given passive tree, expanding your choices. The real brilliance of the 4-pronged talent tree lies in how the nodes blend different playstyles together. While each tree has a specific focus, there will be certain nodes that will infer bonuses for a different type of build, possibly laying the groundwork for hybrid builds. For example, the druid tree mainly focuses on physical damage and shape-shifting. But there's a slew of nodes that split bonuses between the player and their pets, including a late node that gives both a ton of resilience and bonus damage as long as you only have one minion. There are a ton of other examples of these incredibly well thought out and frankly awesome talent trees that hand the reins over to the player and allows them to be creative. Finally, the last piece of our build puzzle is skill level. In Last Epoch, you can choose to specialize in up to 5 skills. While you specialize in a certain skill, you gain points which can then be allocated on this awesome branching skill system. The nodes can do anything as benign as simply increasing damage or cooldown rate to straight up changing how the spell functions, and just about everything in between. I have almost nothing but praise for this system, from its straightforward delivery to its dizzying implication. However, I've got one big old complaint, and it's a doozy. Whenever you want to re-specialize in another skill or simply respec the skill you're using, you reset your points down to a set level that is much lower than where you should be in the game. What this effectively does is punish the player for experimenting and trying out different skills to see which playstyle suits them best, which I think is silly. Your game should be a playground for players to romp in, an open field. Tear down this fence and let me have fun, damn it! Let me in! Let me in! To sum up my feelings on Last Epoch's potential as far as build paths are concerned, I think this game has great bones. Meaning there are a ton of cool and unique ideas, and with the addition of more gear, content, and frequent balance patches, then this game will flourish in this department. The skill and talent systems in particular have a ton of potential for a player who understands the game to explore and make some really creative choices. While some of the choices fly directly in the face of fun and experimentation, the good far outweighs the bad. Next, let's talk about the overall gameplay experience. One glaring no-no for me is that Last Epoch is a 100% online game, which is giving me Vietnam flashbacks of Diablo 3 on launch. Ugh. My personal experience with online-only ARPGs is a shift towards creating bland and uninspiring seasonal content rather than consistently sharpening and honing the core gameplay experience. This is not necessarily a negative for this game if you generally enjoy the seasons in games like Path of Exile and Diablo 3, but it is a consideration you need to make if you're considering purchasing it. Apart from many personal issues, Last Epoch plays pretty beautifully. Movement abilities feel smooth and immediate, damaging abilities have these crunchy, impactful animations that make the smallest part of your gamer brain light up like a Christmas tree. Even your mundane enemies have a diverse skill set that make you pay attention in order to not get whomped. And I really dig that. Even as a tried and true veteran of the ARPG genre, I would rarely be able to shut my brain off and plow through areas without thinking. Another area that I wanted to highlight was resource management, as I think this game has a pretty decent twist on the traditional mana pool. In most ARPGs, you have massive pools of mana, and your job throughout a fight is to make sure that number stays well above 0, usually by using innate abilities, careful resource management, and potions. Your character has an incredibly shallow pool of mana, which will generally get used up with 2 or 3 big skills or a bunch of smaller ones, but it's always rapidly replenishing to counterbalance that. This forces the player to think about fights in a different way. You have to be patient and tactful, so you don't leave yourself backed into a corner without your defensive or movement spells available. They also have this really cool aspect that lets you go into negative mana if you're in a really tight spot, which will force you onto your back foot until you can stabilize again. Finally, it's time for the most important factor for whether or not this game is a big old sandwich that everyone thinks is tasty, or a smaller sandwich that's bad and not good. Probably too much mayo. I'm pretty bad at analogies, but it is time to talk about story and aesthetic. Anyways, the central conceit of Last Epoch is a really cool one. Without spoiling too much, you travel between different eras in time in order to stop a world-ending calamitous event. You see some areas as they are vibrant and young, only to travel them in the future to find them run down and desolate, which is neat. My biggest complaint is that this cool storytelling device goes woefully underutilized, as the story as a whole has a pretty bland presentation. Here's the gist of the story. You go through an area and kill things, probably with a stick or magic or something, and then you meet a man and he goes, "Who are you? Wait a second, is that the magic MacGuffin crystal? Quickly, you must go to place and do thing." And so you go to do thing at the place, probably with a stick or magic or something, and after you do, you meet a woman and she goes, "I don't trust anybody, most of all you. But wait a second, is that the magic MacGuffin crystal?" And then it goes on and on until the heat death of the universe. The story actually picks up in the back half of this game when a big reveal happens and your quest shift from a nebulous one to a quest with a more concrete and direct path. It's here you get to interact with a bunch of deities and the people who worship them, all the while getting a feel for their culture. I would honestly love more of this. Finally, let's chat about the aesthetics of this game, meaning the visuals and the sound design. I've already told you about the... well, you know. But I want to talk about the look and feel of the different locales availed to us in Last Epoch, which tend to range from pretty but forgettable to some of the most wonderful settings I have seen in any ARPG. As far as looks go, it's pretty refreshing to see an ARPG really dive headfirst into an actually bright and beautiful color palette. Games like Path of Exile, Diablo, and Grim Dawn tend to have very muted and understated color, which is why it's always so refreshing to find a game like Torchlight or Last Epoch who are willing to visually stimulate its players. Speaking of, Last Epoch has possibly one of my favorite zones in any ARPG. It's this gorgeous stormy coast that transcends into an underwater palace, filled with these outcroppings of vibrant coral with splashes of lavender and gold trimming. It's a chaotic battlefield filled with giant crabs, merfolk that dart around the battlefield with wild hit-and-run tactics, all underscored by this haunting, mysterious score that sticks with you. So, all in all, what's the final verdict for Last Epoch? Well, it's a well-intentioned ARPG with a few clever systems, as well as some small but noticeable flaws. I definitely enjoyed playing Last Epoch, and I'm going to keep a close eye on it as it grows and changes. I suggest you do the same, and I would strongly consider picking it up once it reaches full release. I, for one, am going to go back and re-review the game after full release and try my hands at some late-game jank, so look out for that. If you enjoyed this review, don't like, comment, or subscribe. What I'd like you to do instead is take to the forums, or Twitter, or even throw a brick through a window of yonder Last Epoch developer. Let them know that you want a were-otter skin for the Primalist. Allow your voices to accumulate into a swelling ocean, and riding atop that yawning wave is me, your shining deity, your god from here unto eternity. You could, if you were so inclined, follow me on Twitch, or join the Discord. Links in the description. Until next time, do my bidding!